And thank you for your time on the News Today desk.
Thank you very much.
Really an opportunity now to meet some of the national development challenges. Tell us briefly how the government plans to use this FOCAC partnership to address challenges like poverty, unemployment, and so on, and inequality, of course.
Indeed. You'd recall that before this FOCAC summit that started today, there was a state visit by the Chinese president on the 2nd of this month. So yes, some of those details, and you remember that one of the things that came out there was that the nature of agreements that were signed there amounted to something like 94 billion rands, which is a huge amount of money. So even the president and the deputy president have been visiting China to really try and learn some of those things that can help our country, especially the state-owned enterprises. So this kind of relationship now put together with a bigger gathering like FOCAC would impact positively in terms of making sure that a country like us that seeks to industrialize and modernize is able to tap in some of the experience that China has gone through already. It's the second largest economy in the world, yes, and then it has made significant progress, and then there are some lessons that we are learning from there.
Of course, China and Africa today are a veritable force on the globe. Let's talk about China's role on the continent right now, Mzwandile. Are we seeing a kind of departure from its original stance of non-interference when it comes to security interventions on the continent? We're seeing China play a more vociferous role in peace efforts in South Sudan. Also, we've seen them commit to 100 million rand in military aid to the AU in recent months. So there does seem to be a desire now from the Asian giant to protect its economic investment on the continent, because without security there can be no development.
Once you start to play a leading role anywhere, so necessarily there would be certain issues that would arise. Yes. You know that China is a major investor on the African continent, and it is in its interest to see this continent stabilize. Just imagine after spending all those billions of dollars on this continent, and then the continent just is torn apart because of civil wars. It will lose. It stands to lose a lot. Yes. So it's important that as much as it will not engage in sort of let's say taking sides and fighting, but it must make sure that it helps to stabilize the situation. Let's take an example of the AU headquarters, for example. China donated that free of charge. Yes. But of course, we know there's a lot of things involved, because it also wants to have a serious footprint on the African continent, which it has already, by the way.
Yes. So is the trade between South Africa and China mutually beneficial now? Because one does get the sense that it's still weighted heavily in the favor of China.
There are many factors that are in favor of China in this regard. As much as it's always necessary to have trade that favors both. But the fact that China is a much bigger market, so you can't run away from that. By that, it means it will always have an advantage. Secondly, China is much more developed than the rest of the African continent. So it means in that way, it will also favor China. That's why it seems to plow in more funds to try and help the continent to also develop. Because once you are at a level where you are developed, so then you would be able to be at a level of negotiating at more of an equal partnership.
Very quickly, Mzwandile, how does the AU plan to make use of FOCAC to realize the African Agenda 2063?
One of the important things, when FOCAC was established, I think 15 years ago, in 2000, AU was not part of it. It was just a relationship of China with African countries. But in 2011, because now AU has formed into a particular structure where they are able to align their thinking and their agenda. So they have now put AU as part of FOCAC. So which means its desire, the AU's desire to industrialize and modernize, now go hand in hand with that of China, because China is helping to do just that. You know, the kind of infrastructure projects that they've done on the continent, airports, rail, roads, and they're still going on and on.
Of course. Thank you, Mzwandile, for your time on the News Today desk. We could go on chatting for the rest of the afternoon. We'll continue in the newsroom later. But for now, let's move on to some other news. Gauteng politicians took to the streets in remembrance of Tata